Hello, my name is Bree Ledbetter. I am a graduate from Kansas State University, and I'm very excited to be here interviewing with you today for the Banjo High School Orchestra teacher job. So let's just get started with this interview. So what strategies do I use to teach good intonation both individually and as an ensemble? So the first thing that's super important when teaching intonation to kids is making sure that you demonstrate what you teach. Because they're going to watch you and they're going to copy whatever you do, even if you might not be saying to do it. So if you yourself demonstrate good intonation, that is the first step. The second thing I would do is have my students be able to audiate the pitch, whether that be singing it, humming it, that sort of thing, because audiation can actually help them better play in tune and in tone faster, because they have that audiated and basis to go off of. So the next thing I would do is teach my students how to tune their instruments. In order to know how to play with a good tone, you have to be also in tune. Those two kind of go hand in hand. So I would make sure they have a tuner, whether that be on their phones, their iPads, Chromebooks, those sorts of things, or a physical tuner. Then, once they get all in tune themselves, I would also help them by playing a pitch and have them listen to be able to tell if they're in tune or not. This is very important. And then I would have a student volunteer to do the same thing, including the students in the process. And then once they have all that, before you even do that, I completely forgot to mention this, is you want to make sure they have a good setup. They're having proper posture, proper instrument carriage, that their left hand is placed the right way, and that they're hitting the notes with the right spot on their fingers, that they're hitting it with the fleshy part of their finger. That way not the fleshy part. They're not hitting it with the fleshy part, that they're hitting it with the tip of their finger. That way they stay good and in tone. So, hypothetical situation. Your first class you are teaching is the second year 7th grade orchestra. They performed the following pieces in the previous spring semester of their 6th grade year: Abandoned Funhouse by Brian Balmages and Concerto for Triangle by Mike Hackenickle. The three pieces I would program for the ensemble's first concert are Cripple Creek by Edmund Senecki. This piece is a fantastic selection for introducing students to American folk music. I know when I was getting into music, that was something that really resonated with me, and were some of my favorite pieces. And in talking with students, these are some of the things that connect with them the best, because in their elementary music classes, these are the things they're working on singing. So then it kind of transfers over. And then Edmund Senecki has really good arrangements. In researching this, they're well crafted for developing orchestras and capture the lively spirit of the tune. And this song often features opportunities for things such as détaché and hooked bowing, as well as rhythmic accuracy, and playing lighter. And it's also just really fun for everyone involved, for me, the students, and the audience members. And you have that opportunity to teach the history of the piece as well, and I think that's also really important, is being able to understand the backstory behind the piece to be able to play the piece even better. The next piece I would pick is Beethoven's Lullaby by Brian Balmages. This works really well because they had just played a Brian Balmages piece, so then they have that connection already. And this is a nice contrast to the other two pieces we have programmed, as it teaches them lyrical and expressive playing, and they have nice legato, smooth bowing, and they can work on that nice warm sound. And again, just like we talked about earlier, this reinforces intonation at a slower tempo, and they get to work on varied dynamics as well. And it's often a familiar tune as well. And then my final piece I would pick is Dragon Hunter by Richard Meyer. This is a standard in orchestra, and it's so fun for not only me, but for the students as well. They get really engaged and excited when we play this. And Richard Meyer is known for writing engaging pieces, as seen in Dragon Hunter. There's driving rhythms, everyone gets the melodic line at some point, from violin 1 to basses, and it will allow our students to work on articulation with staccato and accents, as well as resetting the bow. building a strong, unified sound, and being very dramatic and showing the story behind the piece. You want to see them go on that journey of hunting this dragon. So the 6th grade, I will have the 6th grade orchestra for 45 minutes every day. How would I structure my daily lesson to plan for this routine? So the first thing I would do is, first we would spend 2 to 3 minutes stretching. I think stretching is so important in an orchestra because you get all of the tension out of your body. When students are learning, they often get really tense. They will play harder than they need to. They will just get very, very tense, and that leads to poor habits as well as oftentimes more pain than they need to be. So just getting all of this stress out of their body as well as the stress out of their minds, it kind of brings them into the orchestra setting and makes them just feel a lot better. Then we would do a 5-minute tuning cycle, kind of like what we talked about earlier, but we just go around the room tuning all of our strings. And then for 9 minutes, we would do warm-ups. So the first 4 minutes of this would just be working on different scales of the pieces we're playing or different scales that we just need to be working on. And this could look like just playing the scale, improvisation in the key signature, those sorts of things. There's lots of different activities we could do. And then for 5 minutes, we're going to work on sight reading. I think sight reading is so important, and especially in the state of Kansas, we don't do enough. Because half of what we do is sight reading, so the better we can get at sight reading, the better we can get at music making. So we would go to sightreadinglab.com, and we would go and we'd just work on different sight readings throughout the day. We would give them an opportunity, or I would just get a piece that we've not played before, put it in front of them, and just kind of go over what would be needed for it and just work on sight reading. For the next 23 minutes, we would work on our repertoire for the day. Now that we've kind of done these pre-teaching strategies, we can go through and work on the rep. Whether this would be the songs we're playing, maybe something out of our books, something like that. And then the last 5 minutes would be warm down stretches, because again, making sure to stretch and properly maintain your body is so important when playing a string instrument. And then we would work on an SEL activity out of this book. Music education and social emotional learning. There's tons of stuff in here. The whole second half of this book is just activities you can do. And I think it is a really good book. If you don't already have it, you should get it. And then, so our school has one-to-one iPad for our students. How would you incorporate this technology in your orchestra curriculum? So I think having this technology is a very good tool to have. There's tons of things you could do simply from just a sheet music standpoint. There's various different sheet music apps like Fourscore, GoodNotes, StaffPad, that allow students to have their sheet music on their iPad. Not only does that save you time of having to print off sheet music, save money for printing the sheet music, as well as having to track the sheet music down at the end. But if you use StaffPad, this allows teachers to push out the sheet music to students on their iPads, so you don't have to worry about what they're doing on their iPads as well. And they can go in and write all their fingerings, have those there, have a fingering chart easily available. Then we have things like MuseScore and GarageBand, so then we can work on creating our own songs, whether that be through the scales or something like the repertoire we're currently playing. This gives students a chance to connect with the music they're playing even more by kind of taking those ideas and making their own music. And then there's musictheory.net or Tenuto that we can work on ear training and music theory. Again, if you play an instrument, working on your music theory and ear training is so important. That way you can get even better and work on your intonation and work on hearing what you're playing. So our school has a wide range of diversity, ethnically, culturally, and socioeconomically. How would you include and welcome students from a wide range of backgrounds in your curriculum or music classroom? So one thing I would do is actively seek program music from a diverse range of composers and cultures, whether that be music by composers of color, women composers, LGBTQ composers, or music that reflects various different cultural backgrounds or different stories. that's one of the best parts about music, is that we all come from different backgrounds and music comes to unite us. And I think we have so many stories that are told through music. And that's why I think telling the stories behind music are also very important. I don't want to just program I don't want to program a piece of music by a woman and then just kind of go off about my day. I want to explain what's the importance of the music being programmed and those sorts of things. And then beyond the traditional Western classical music, I incorporate units, lessons, exploring music of different cultures, things like folk music, world music, contemporary genres, those sorts of things, because these are what our students are actually listening to and what their cultures are. So that gets them even more connected to my music classroom. How do you balance fun and engaging atmosphere while maintaining a rigorous rehearsal? So the first thing I like to do is set clear expectations and goals from the beginning and make sure those are set throughout the year. Once we set these clear expectations, we can be more fun because we have what we need to do and how things are supposed to be ran, and then we can have a little more fun along the way. I would also incorporate varied activities. That way students aren't getting bored. Maybe one day for our scales we'll work on just learning the scale. The next day we'll work on improvisation in the scale. The next day we'll work on creating a song in the scale. Those sorts of things. And then I believe in positive and constructive feedback. So just making sure that we're engaging our students through showing what they're doing great. And maybe giving them some constructive feedback along the way, but making sure that we really highlight what they're doing well as well. Again, student involvement and ownership through gamification and creative challenges, kind of like what we talked about earlier. But then also making sure they have breaks. Sometimes students are 50 minutes can be a long period of time for them to be playing. So just making sure to give them time off the instrument as well, playing in guitar position instead of up here, those sorts of things. How do I engage reluctant learners in my classroom? So there's many ways I'd like to do this. The first thing is I want to find their why. Every student comes into the music classroom for a different reason, so I want to find my students' whys as to why they're here. That could be simply because their parents made them, and we'd address those concerns a bit differently than, my older sister was a all-state violinist, and I really grew and was inspired by her, and those sorts of things. So every student has a different why. Celebrating their small successes, so maybe they got out their instrument today when they've not been getting out their instrument. That's a small success and step for them. Or maybe they finally got that fourth finger D. Perfect. Something to celebrate. And then also offering choice when available. Again, a lot of this works with do we want to play this piece first or this piece first today? We have to get through both, but which do you want to do first? Offering that sort of choice is really good for students in connecting them. And then differentiated instruction. Every student learns differently, and this is so important to offer different types of instruction to them, whether that be showing them physically, giving them a piece of paper so they can visually see it. There's lots of kinesthetic learners in music that we often don't think about because we're often telling them you can't listen and do at the same time, but that's just not true. A lot of students actually, when you're showing them to do something, they have to physically do it before it connects in their brain. So just making sure to connect all those different types of learning styles. What role does the parent play in music education, and how do I plan to engage or collaborate with parents in my program? So parents play a vital role in my program. I actually like to use the term guardian, but guardians play a vital role in supporting their children's musical journey. First, I want to support and engage with my parents from the get-go. As parents are the ones bringing their children to rehearsals, bringing them to concerts, buying or renting their instruments if possible, enrolling them in lessons if they're taking lessons, putting up with the bad playing that they might be doing, supporting them at concerts, and those sorts of things. Guardians are that number one support system for them. So I want to thank them for that, because they would not be in my classroom if I didn't have that parent support. And this also goes through connection of parents as well. I also want them to help facilitate a practice system. So I want them to create a supportive home environment when possible for practice, even if it's just a few minutes a day. And this can look like bringing the teachers in on Meet the Teacher Night and showing them what good practice habits look like. Because oftentimes a lot of parents may not have been in an orchestra classroom before, so they don't know what practice is supposed to look like. So giving them ideas of how their students can practice and what they're supposed to be practicing is so important. Again, communication and collaboration for parents is key. Keeping that communication. What are we doing? When are we doing it? When are concerts? When can they get involved? These sorts of things as well. As well as taking time out of my day to make those connections with the parents. Whether that be hey, little Jimmy was at a soccer meet. How did it go? Those sorts of things as well. And then, how will you encourage students' social emotional growth in the young classroom? So, like I said before, the Music Education and Social Emotional Learning, The Heart of Teaching Music by Scott Edgar is a great book on this. In the back of the book, there's lots of different games and ideas of things you can do. My personal favorite one is the Not Just Dead White Guys activity, where you go through and listen to different songs and talk about the artist and the societal issue or the history behind the piece. Like there's Basket Case by Green Day, talks about mental illness, or Blackbird by the Beatles talks about race, or those sorts of things. And obviously we could gauge this to whatever we're working on as well, or whatever our students are going through. These are all important things to remember, as well as talking with my students to figure out what's going on in their lives, whether that be sports, the play, those sorts of things. Really taking time to connect with those students and letting students connect with each other as well. We've kind of talked about that through this whole interview, but great book, 10 out of 10 would recommend. How will you maintain balance in your life between work, home, family, friends, personal passions, and responsibilities? So this is a fantastic question that I'm still working on circumventing myself. So the first thing I really need to work on, I have a terrible habit of saying no to things, or not saying no to things. I want to do everything possible. So I'm still working on setting my own boundaries, learning to say no, and really taking time for myself. Another important thing is continuous reflection. We can't know what we're doing right or wrong if we don't take that time to reflect as to what went right or wrong. So this could look like recording myself in rehearsals, and just figuring out what's going on, as well as how I'm feeling. Sometimes we often forget to take a step back and listen to our bodies and our brains, whether we're in pain, tired, overworked, not feeling well, those sorts of things. Time management is key here. I like to schedule everything, whether that be I'm going to go hang out with a friend. Let's put that in my calendar. Oh, I have to do this thing, this thing, this thing. I put those in my calendar so I physically do not forget them. And then self-care is super important, whether that be just something simple like going on a walk after school, or getting there slightly early to decompress, listen to music before I go in, those sorts of things. And then delegation is also really key when possible. So thank you so much for letting me interview. I hope to hear back from you soon about the orchestra job at Banjo High School. Thank you.